Kids, welcome back to the Far Out Podcast. How you doing today? You doing good? You having a good day? You are? Oh, that's good to hear. Me? How am I doing? Oh, well, I'm also doing quite well. Thank you for asking. And kids, I know what I know what story I want to start this show with, but I have no proper segue to get there, so we're just going to dive right in. Kids, where were you when the great Kit Kat heist of 2026 took place? As for myself, I cannot remember, but I can tell you where the job itself took place because there was a Kit Kat heist over in Europe where 12 tons of Kit Kat products were stolen. And it's funny. It's funny when stuff like this happens. Well, first, let me say this. Kids, just to clarify, I do not condone crime. I am actually against crime, funny enough. However, every now and then something happens in the world that feels like it should be part of a cartoon. Yet, when we realize it's not in a cartoon, it reminds us to take life seriously, but don't take life too seriously. Because this story it's just freaking ridiculous. But also, I must ask this very important question. While I do not condone crime, I must ask, what is the crime in question that the thieves committed? Of course, you could just outright say thievery, but really, they're stealing deliciousness. They have exquisite taste. Kit Kat is like maybe a top 3 candy bar in my opinion. Maybe. I think for me, if I had to go right now, gun to the head, I think I would do Twix number 1, Kit Kat number 2, and then for my top 3, like I don't have a lot of time to pick. I'm just gonna run the gambit, and go for the hits here. Number 3, I think I might go. Man, this is tough. I have it between 2, but again, gun to my head, I'm gonna go Almond Joy. I like the spread of flavors that I have in my top 3. The one I was really drifting, between to round up my top 3 there between the Almond Joy was the Snickers bar, but I realized that's kind of similar to a Twix. And Snickers is a very heavy candy bar. It's very filling, which is good. I mean, you want that kind of snack to be filling as opposed to light. But a Snickers is almost too much. And an Almond Joy, look, I understand it's very much an acquired taste. You got the coconut in there that people don't always go for that, and you got, the almonds in there as well. People might not be a fan of that. You look at something like a Kit Kat, that's pretty much just like a really solid candy bar in of itself. It's kind of similar to a Hershey's, where Hershey's is just chocolate, but with the Kit Kat, you not only have good chocolate consistency, you also got a good crunch to it, and you got the fun factor of the individual bars themselves. Of course, you can break them apart, and stuff like that. I know some people love to lick the chocolate off of each individual Kit Kat bar, each individual piece. I think that is kind of crazy that people go out and dissect their Kit Kats, but whatever, as long as you're enjoying it, I suppose. But yeah, look, so somewhere 12 tons of Kit Kats were stolen, and this has kind of taken the internet by storm. And again, while I do not condone crime, and I hope that the products themselves are returned in a orderly fashion, I must say, the thieves have good taste at the end of the day. Again, if they would have gone for a Twix, a Kit Kat, or an Almond Joy, I would have been like, hey, you know what, like, can't be mad for playing the game, So, so the great Kit Kat heist of 2026 has kind of sort of taken the internet by storm, and it is a funny story that, who knows, could have interesting developments. But they really have a good problem over there, because what do you do now with 12 tons of Kit Kats? I mean, that will literally last you a lifetime, So Yeah, again, I do not condone crime, but for the fun factor, I like this story, and for the overall selection of said, said prize. There are worse candies to go after than a Kit Kat. So again, to the thieves out there, if you're listening, and I know that you are, you've got good taste. Anyway, kids, moving on, and once again, seamless segue because I have no idea how to steer into the next, topic selection. I recently saw a movie that I want to talk about, and this is an older movie, yet I got to see it in a theater, which is the proper place to see movies. That is where movies live. It is the home of movies. And this movie in particular is considered a classic. I'm talking about the 1987 film, I think it is. Certainly in the 80s, but I think it's the 87 proper. I'm talking about The Princess Bride. And here's the thing is that I've seen this movie plenty of times. This really is a crowd pleaser, and this movie really is a family film. I remember seeing it when I was a kid, teenager, young adult. Now I'm in my later 20s. And every time I find this movie, it just delights. People say that like Star Wars is the quintessential sci-fi movie. Lord of the Rings is the quintessential sword and sandals epic. The Princess Bride might be the quintessential fantasy fairy tale movie. It really is. I mean, it is as classic and as heartwarming as it possibly gets. This movie feels like just traditional theater. I mean, the colors and the characters and the dialogue and even the action sequences, you don't necessarily think of, Princess Bride, great action. You more so think of laughs, which there are, plenty of them. But like the sword play in The Princess Bride is really, really well shot and captured and choreographed. Like there are some legitimately, cool feats of athleticism and all that stuff. And it's entertaining. And, as I said for myself, I saw this movie when I was a kid, teenager, young adult, so on and so forth. It doesn't matter if you're 7, 17, 27, or, 77. I think you can turn on this movie and just enjoy it and sit back and watch it, whether you're watching, again, the cool choreography, you're watching for the dialogue, you're watching for the jokes or the overall plot, or even just, the cool sets, because there are some really amazing costumes and set pieces that go on here, like the whole sequence that's captured inside, that dark forest. I'm sure that there's some camera trickery that's done to make it look bigger than it is, but like, when you actually see it on screen, I mean, the place looks huge. It looks like it just goes on and on and on forever. It reminds me of how Dagobah in Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back was captured, and I believe that movie is also a product of the 80s as well, early 80s compared to later 80s for The Princess Bride. But still, this was made back in that time when everything was done, for real, where visual effects were just kind of coming up, just getting good. That was when that kind of revolution happened, again, capped off, with Star Wars, with George Lucas and whatnot. But yeah, this movie is really, really fun, and I really, really appreciate it. And I just, getting to see it in a theater with a full audience, hearing the laughs, just sitting back and having a good time. It's not a hard watch. You can very easily just turn it on, sit back and relax, but you can get totally invested in this and totally just get enamored by all the fun and the zaniness. And it's just, it made for a really fun viewing experience. And so if you have not seen The Princess Bride, I highly, highly recommend it. It really is an incredible movie. I mean, if there are people out there who thinks that this belongs on like a Mount Rushmore of movies, I don't necessarily know if I can immediately put it there, but I will hear that argument because, again, just watching it, after not having seen it for a couple of years, I was just like, my gosh, I was like, this is so good, just front to back. So yeah, if you haven't seen The Princess Bride in a while, do yourself a favor, treat yourself, kids, and watch this movie because it is indeed one of the greats. Kids, welcome back to the Far Out Podcast. Baseball season is in full swing, pun intended. And while it's good to have my favorite sport back, my various teams that I follow are all playing to middling levels of success right now. And I say teams because I do enjoy multiple teams inside of the sport. Of course, the Minnesota Twins have my heart and my wallet because they were the first team that got me not only interested into baseball, but also pretty much interested in sports, like broadly speaking. They really expanded my horizon when it comes to the Minnesota sports teams and just kind of that overall culture. And so, I love baseball for many reasons, but my Minnesota Twins are my number one team. And then, second to them is the Kansas City Royals. I have family, or I guess I should say I had family that lived in Kansas City, and because of that, when I'd go see them, I would, go to a Royals game or two. I especially tried to coordinate trips to see my family around the times that the Twins were playing the Royals, in Kansas City there. So I've been to Kauffman Stadium. I've been to the Big K, as they call it, and it's a really nice stadium. And so I've also gotten to see Bobby Witt Jr. play live, and boy, he sure is a heck of a talent. He's one heck of a baseball player. He's like 25. He's younger than me, but he looks like he could just rip me in half and all that stuff. And he's playing on a Hall of Fame trajectory. I'll just say that. Like he's one of the best players in the entirety of the league right now, and he's gonna have a heck of a career. And then speaking of the family that got me interested into the Royals, they have since left Kansas City, and they have now moved to Arizona. And so through that same kind of osmosis, I think is the correct word, I am now becoming a backdoor Arizona Diamondbacks fan. And I'm not really quite there yet on them. I follow the team like on Twitter, and I will, check their stats and whatnot. But like, Joe Mauer, Max Kepler, Byron Buxton, all these players got me, interested in the Twins. Bobby Witt Jr., Salvador Perez, they got me interested in the Royals. I could not name you a single player on the Diamondbacks yet. I could not tell you the name of their stadium, yada yada. I'm not even sure if they've won any World Series. I have no idea. But I'm getting into the serpent culture, as it were, the snake culture for the Diamondbacks very slowly, as I'm just trying to expand my sports horizon a little more, because it's fun to have another team to root for, especially when my primary team, the Twins, aren't doing so hot. And that's kind of the whole point of why I wanted to talk about this, because the Twins, the Royals, and the Diamondbacks are not doing very well baseball-wise. Granted, it's early. We're only 4 games into the season, but the Twins just played the Royals, which was a real treat for me. So I wore apparel from both teams and whatnot. And so I was essentially cheering for both teams, and I was cheering whenever any of them did anything good. So if the Twins scored, I was like, yay. If the Royals scored, I was also like, yay. Between the two teams, I would have liked the Twins to have won. The Royals did end up winning, but like I said, if one of them slacks, then I'm hoping that the other one will overtake, that slack and go on to have great success, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. Again, it's very early in the baseball season. We've played less than 10 games, but like the Twins right now, they're 1-3, with one of the losses being handed to them via the Royales with cheese, as it were. And yeah, the Twins are an interesting ball club right now. I would describe them as a deflated tire, and that's me looking at them from the end of last season to the postseason to now the start of the 2026 season, because if you follow baseball at all, if you follow the Twins especially, you'll know that the Twins essentially gutted the lineup at, I believe, the trade deadline for 2025. And so the team that you started with in 2025 was not the team at all that you ended with inside of the same year. They cut away like 70-80% of the active lineup, leaving only a few players, and that was really a bummer for me to see, because some of them, even some of the quote-unquote bad players, I still liked them. I liked seeing them go up, and I liked the kind of culture and the presence that they had inside of the clubhouse. and whatnot. And also with me being a big baseball fan, with me being a Twins fan, I have my phone set to alerts for whenever they do anything. They make a cool play, they add a player, they drop a player, and stuff like that. When the trade deadline was going down for the Twins, my phone was just beeping off the hook because I got notifications every time they let someone go or they traded someone or something like that. And it was just a real whirlwind, and now on top of that as well, the Twins at one point were up for sale. The owners of the team, the Pohlad family, said we're interested in selling the team. They went through a couple of rounds of various degrees of interest with some buyers. No conclusion was ever reached, and so the Pohlads retained control of the team going into 2026. There's also a new manager of the Twins. Rocco Baldelli is out, and now I can't think of the name of the other guy that just got added to the Twins. He's a former Pirates manager. I can think of his old team. I just can't think of his actual name. But anyway, we got a new manager in for the Twins now. Again, formerly with the Pirates, and they themselves are not that good of a team either. And so, yeah, it's just been an emotional roller coaster, And so now the Twins, lose a lot of team members. They lose, like I said, a coach, and we go into 2026 with kind of this who knows what's going to happen mentality. Could we shock the world and, come back, from last to first, or are we just going to kind of limp around type stuff? And at least for right now, it feels like we're just kind of limping around, because our pitching staff is not, or our pitching rotation, I should say, has not been the greatest, and we haven't had the best offense nor the best defense either. And like I said, I was kind of just watching the Royals and the Twins game here, and I was watching the Royals get a sense of momentum behind them, and with the Twins, I wasn't really feeling that. And again, it's early. I understand it's early. Talk to me in May after a full month of baseball is under our belts and whatnot. But I don't know. It's weird. I think maybe this year I might gravitate more towards into my Royals fandom and my budding Diamondbacks fandom than I will say my Twins fandom. And I hate to say that, I do, but just bear with me here. I love baseball so much, and again, I love the Twins specifically, but it's what an awkward position it is to be in as a fan when you don't really feel that sense of energy or momentum behind your favorite team. And again, I can't stress this enough. It is a small sample size, but I've followed each individual game that the Twins have played so far very closely. I've either watched them on TV or I've listened to them on the radio, or I follow the stats and whatnot. And I got to be honest, I'm not really loving what I'm seeing. Whereas the Royals, of course, have some real talent there, and then the Diamondbacks, they themselves got off to kind of a rocky start as well to start their season. But again, I can't stress this enough. It is early, sky's the limit. But yeah, so if you are a baseball fan like myself, and if you have more, well, first of all, if you're a fan of baseball and you're listening to this, thank you. And then comment down below what your favorite team is, and then comment down below if you have a secondary favorite team or a third one or just a backup team, as well. I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan, and so for a couple of years, my backup team was the Kansas City Chiefs because, again, just that connection through Kansas City with the Royals as well, that just made sense for me. The Chiefs are not my backup team anymore. I've grown really stale to them, with Patrick Mahomes being kind of a diva and Travis Kelce and, Taylor Swift and all that stuff. And then, you got the Chiefs being the new quote-unquote Patriots. They can do no wrong type stuff, yada, yada. So I've grown kind of cold on my Chiefs fandom. But again, now that I have family living in Arizona, does that mean I'm going to become a backdoor Cardinals fan? I'm not jumping at that. So, I'm very much married to the Minnesota Vikings, even though we're going through our own kind of, relationship issues right now. The Vikings and I are having a fight. That won't persist for forever, but we're having a fight. But, the Twins and I are not having a fight. We were last year. We might have a fight later this year. But, for right now, I'm just looking at the Twins, and I'm like, you doing all right? You feeling okay? You hungry? You cold? You thirsty? What's going on here? And the Royals, I'm like, hey, good for you. Let's see what can happen. So, Yeah, I don't know. It's just and then like I said, the Diamondbacks. I'm like, hey, the new kids on the block. How you doing? So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, baseball season is here. Thank goodness, and all that stuff. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting time being a fan. I can just kind of see that in my future. But I'm in for the long haul. I am. Thankfully, baseball is a very long season, and so I'm just glad to have it back. But yeah, just kind of an interesting way to start things for 2026 here. And keeping it with sports, I apologize for not having all the info on this story, but in my defense, this story is actually so new that information is continuing to come out at the time of this recording, with it being March 31st now. So we're just at the tail end of March and the beginning of April. But I talked about baseball and how I'm a huge baseball fan. Well, as I said, baseball opened my eyes to the world of sports, broadly speaking. Now I'm a football fan and a hockey fan, and I'm also a basketball fan, with my favorite team being the Minnesota Timberwolves, and also, that's my only team too. I'm not going to act like, I'm this huge NBA nerd who knows lots of different players from various different teams. Of course, I know the big names like, LeBron James, Steph Curry, stuff like that. But one name I did not know was a man by the name of Jaden Ivey, and he is a former Chicago Bulls player. And I say former because he has been released by that team because he has said some things that were deemed, quote, controversial, unquote. And the things in question that he said were that he was going against the NBA, as an entire league in their promotion of Pride Month. He essentially said that Pride Month practices and promotes unrighteousness, and that he himself as an individual apparently is a newly confessed and devoted Christian. So praise the Lord for that. And all that, which, I mean, I honestly don't know the validity of that, because I haven't been following him. It's not like I've seen him on his social media do a complete 180 in what he posts or does not post. But since he has started to confess his faith openly and publicly, he has also taken up the sword against culture he deems to be incorrect, with one of them being Pride Month. And Pride Month, while it is not actively happening, that culture is constantly around us, and Pride Month is coming, with that being this June. So we're only a couple of months away. But since he has gone out and spoken against the NBA, again, calling their promotion of Pride Month as quote-unquote unrighteousness, his team, the Chicago Bulls, has decided to part ways. They have viewed his conduct to be, not aligned with them. They did release an official statement here, and I will find that at some point, but it was very mealy mouth, very very watery, very political jargon and all that stuff. And look, again, I don't know this basketball player. I don't follow him. I did not know he was on the Bulls. I didn't even know he existed until his name has started to circulate for this reason. But regardless of your opinions on him or on the Bulls or whatever, I mean, I don't like that this is happening in a sport that I enjoy. And again, I'm a bigger baseball fan than I am, say, a basketball fan, or even a football fan or whatnot. But in the NBA, well, in any sport, for example, pick a name out of a hat. Some people have done some really awful things. Some people have, actually gone to jail. They've committed legitimate crimes. They've, abused, their partners. They've been found to get caught up in gambling things. They've used performance-enhancing drugs. They've done a litany of things, and sometimes they get released, but sometimes what will honestly happen is that there's a slap on the wrist, or that there's a fine, or a penalty, or maybe a suspension. But with this player for the Chicago Bulls, it now seems that his comments about talking against Pride Month have gone quote unquote too far. And this is the official statement that the Chicago Bulls have released regarding Jaden Ivey. I was able to pull it up just now. So the Bulls released this graphic saying that the Bulls have announced today that the team has waived guard Jaden Ivey due to conduct detrimental to the team. So, yeah, it's just I'm not a Bulls fan. I'm not a Jaden Ivey fan, but I am a fan of being a Christian, of being true to your beliefs, and of freedom of speech, which is a very hot button topic nowadays, depending on where you fall in the political spectrum. But I don't like the idea of this player being, lambasted because he has decided to express views that, frankly, I don't think are that, charged. Because, as I've said from the very jump on this podcast, I'm a Christian and I'm also a conservative as well. And I do think that Pride Month and that the promotion of that in our sports systems and in our culture, broadly speaking, is not a healthy thing. I think that the umbrella that is pride, pride is a sin as described in the Bible, and now we're devoting a whole month to it. Make that make sense, So there are lots of things that just fall into that are disguised as goodness, that, are disguised as, sexual freedom, relationship freedom, stuff like that, but are really, really harmful. And for this Bulls player to go against the grain and for him to, promote what is considered counterculture and to say, this is unrighteousness, instead you should pick up your cross, and follow Jesus, I think is really powerful. It takes a lot of strength. And because he did that now, he is being casted aside by his team and by surely his players, or at least some of his players, and the NBA as a whole. I don't know if he's now going to be blacklisted. I don't know if he'll get picked up somewhere else. I don't know if he's a good player, to really do that. I mean, if LeBron came out and said stuff like this, and if the Lakers let him go, well, he would land somewhere else, because he's one of the best in the entire history of the sport. Is this Jaden Ivey guy a really good player that he can land somewhere else, or did he literally just sacrifice his whole career to stand up and speak for what he believes in? I don't know. And as this story develops, I'm sure we'll all learn more about it. But just right now in the immediate aftermath, it looks like Jaden Ivey quite literally lost his job for speaking against Pride Month and for promoting traditional values and promoting his faith in Jesus Christ. And I don't like that. And again, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, I'm also a Christian and I'm also a conservative, and I'm very thankful to have not encountered the ire that could come with those affiliations, and I'm sure at some point I will, because again, this is a public platform, it's YouTube, so there are things that I'm sure I'll say that people won't agree with, and not, that's okay. If you disagree with me, that's all right, and I mean this sincerely. I want people on this podcast who do disagree with me and who do come and share their own opinions and worldviews, because I think that the best way we can build a public discourse amongst ourselves is to have conversations, especially with those we disagree with. And so, if there's, again, I'm a Christian. If there's an atheist that wants to come on and talk, I'll have them. I'm a conservative. If there's a liberal that wants to come on and talk about that stuff, I will have them, and I mean that sincerely. And so I don't like the idea that this NBA player, this basketball player, is now having his world turned upside down for expressing his opinions and his beliefs. But that is the world that we live in. Sadly to say, and this stuff does take courage to do, both in big ways and in small. And I just hope that no matter whatever route his life is now going to take, whether he lands with a different team or he goes on to do whatever, I hope that this individual, Mr. Ivey, is finding comfort in the turmoil, knowing that he did the right thing, that he stood up for what he believed in. And we should all be so lucky if we ever find ourselves with that same kind of courage. And to Mr. Ivey, if you're listening, and I know that you are, if you want to come on the podcast and talk about not only this experience, but also what it's like to be a professional basketball player, then please, comment down below and let me know. And maybe one day I'll get you on the Far Out podcast and we can have a nice little chat. I really enjoy the Netflix series called BoJack Horseman, and I understand that it's not the greatest show in existence. It's often too crude, too crass. It makes, light of very serious topics and whatnot, but it can also be incredibly funny and entertaining, and I think that the actual art behind it is really, catching as well. But the show can also be incredibly deep, and it can cut down to the bone marrow on many things. And it's funny that a TV show that has to do with talking animals, talking about the entertainment world, can comment on things like abuse and drug abuse and being selfish and lying. And it deals with so many things, including other things like feeling like you don't always have a purpose in life, or that your life is directionless, how you can have everything you could possibly want, yet you don't feel satisfied by any of it because it's all just fleeting, it's all just frosting, but there's nothing of value beneath it. There's no cake to anything. Everything can be incredibly hollow if you don't have your heart and your mind and your body in the right place at the time. And it's interesting is that I've been really kind of drip feeding myself this series over the course of a couple of years. I'll jump in at one point and I'll watch like 5 or 6 episodes straight. Then I'll jump back out for like a couple of weeks or months. Then I'll jump back in. I'll watch another 5 or 6 episodes and then I'll jump out. Well, now I decided to jump back in, and I jumped back in pretty late in season 4. And for those of you that don't know the series, this is going to sound pretty arbitrary, but for those of you that are familiar with the concepts of BoJack Horseman and where I am specifically in season 4, that being right near the tail end, I just got done watching an episode that had to deal with truly generational issues, things that happened in previous lives that are passed down, into other people, and how one's selfishness can jump from person to person. And it was incredibly sad, but it also it made me feel, because it has to do with dysfunctional relationships and with things that are so incredibly heavy, like it has to do with the topic of abortion and what it means to have a quote unquote wasted life, and what do you do if you're persistently unhappy and things like that. And it's nuts that again this show about talking animals can comment on these things, and how they can make these huge ugly topics digestible for people. And I wasn't expecting the show to hit me on such an emotional level, but that's why I'm recording this kind of impromptu bit about it right now. In fact, I'm actually recording this via my phone because I just got done watching this episode in season 4, and I actually just got a little teary-eyed because I think about people who are going through issues where they're in unhappy marriages, and maybe they have children they weren't expecting, or maybe they don't know what direction to take in life, or maybe they're contemplating a divorce, which is something that I've had to deal with in my own life, where my own parents, they got divorced, and I'm still feeling the aftermath of their decision. And just like how in this episode, characters make decisions in their own lives that affect people completely outside of them. Years down the line, it affects them, yet it still does nonetheless. And not to drag my parents through the mud, but their own decision and their own relationship affected me, and I'm outside of their relationship, and it's still affecting me years later. And I'm saying that not I mean this sincerely. I'm saying that not to drag them through the mud. I'm just trying to provide context for all this stuff, and I'm trying to provide context for also, myself and why I think that things like BoJack Horseman and why storytelling and movies and TV and books just in general can seemingly hit me harder than maybe the average person does when they're watching something. And again, I just wanted to record this commentary, which again might sound pretty random and pretty out of left field, just because I wasn't even intending to talk about BoJack on this episode of the podcast, but again, I turned it on thinking I was going to get a really easy sit down and just have a couple of laughs, and here I am dealing with this episode that just presented a very ugly mirror back into parts of my own life and parts into the lives of those around me. And I'm not saying like I regretted watching it. I didn't. I thought that the episode and that the storytelling throughout BoJack Horseman, especially in season 4, has been really tremendous. But yeah, it just wasn't what I was expecting, and I kind of think that that's also part of the beauty of storytelling through various mediums as well, is that you can get something incredibly deep and enriching in something as silly as the delivery that is BoJack Horseman. And so, yeah, well, this is very much an adult animated series. Again, it's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for kids. So kind of watch it with caution on multiple levels. I do think that if you're someone who has the stomach and who has the heart to get into this stuff, I think it's a really profound way of presenting these things, and it's also incredibly funny at times too, which is why I really enjoy the show. I started watching it because I thought it was funny, and I more or less stayed for how deep and meaningful it can be, and the writing in this is top notch. And yeah, I just wanted to share. And I know, again, this sounds all kind of random and kind of surface level, but yeah, just the back half of BoJack Horseman season 4 has just been really, really heavy duty. It's offered some heavy duty stuff, and it's been really, really incredible as well. And yeah, again, I just found myself in the immediate, final minutes of this episode when the credits started to roll, and I was like, I didn't expect to feel any of this, and I feel I should capture my thoughts. And so, for whatever it's worth, these are my thoughts after finishing an episode of BoJack Horseman, which was incredibly deep and emotional, and I wasn't expecting it to be, but it was really good nonetheless. And yeah, I think you should check out the series at some point. Kids, welcome back to the Far Out Podcast. It's funny, in episode 57 of the podcast, the one I just previously released, I talked about a movie coming out later this May titled Backrooms and how I'm really looking forward to it, despite it being of a genre I'm not particularly drawn to. 1 out of every 50, I'd say, when it comes to scary movies and horror movies, I watch or anticipate, but this is 1 out of the 50, and I'm really looking forward to this movie because I frankly just like the concept of it. I like the idea of the seemingly familiar and inviting spaces that go on forever. So even though the Backrooms idea is just endless hallways and endless office spaces that we've all seen before and we've all encountered before, there is something about the infinity nature to it that makes it really unsettling. Yet, at least for myself, the presentation of it, while it's unsettling, I also want to explore it at the same time. Like, I know I shouldn't venture deep into the back rooms, yet I know that if I were to find myself in the back rooms, I would want to look around every corner and check out all the rooms and, explore this never-ending maze and whatnot. And, now that the last episode of the podcast has come out where I just talked about the first trailer, a second trailer has come out very recently, and I gotta say, it's kind of interesting in how I'm going to dissect this movie, I think, on this podcast, because as I just said, I'm looking forward to the movie. It's really kind of scratching an itch for me. I love the concept, as I previously said, but the whole idea of the movie itself, I'm a little nervous by, because for myself, the appeal of the Backrooms, both as the original concept done by this young guy named, I believe his name is Ken Parsons. The idea that he presented to the world that then, got picked up and has now made, various other films and, videos of a similar nature. The mystery of it all is what attracts me to it. It's the whole idea of the unknown and how we are literally looking around the corner about what could be coming next. And so for me, when it comes to the Backrooms, less is truly more. For me, that's a huge appeal of it. The idea of continuous, nonstop exploration with a bit of a supernatural, scary hunter-prey vibe. I really like that. This movie now is taking this concept, this short film concept that you can find on YouTube to this day, and is expanding it into a feature film of, being either 90 minutes, 2 hours, or, what have you. And both trailers now, while I like them, and I think that the second trailer is better than the first, the problem that I'm facing with the movie is that I feel it's going to reveal too much about the mystery of the Backrooms itself. For me, this concept works better when I don't know anything about it at all. And the presentation that I'm seeing inside the trailers is that they're going to quite literally explore the Backrooms, and they're going to explain away some of the mystery, because we see in the trailers that characters are able to enter and leave the Backrooms, and how they're able to maybe, bring in things with them to help them understand the world. And I frankly don't want an explanation for the Backrooms existing. I don't want an explanation that our characters, our heroes can find. Honestly, what I want this film to be is that I want it to be this kind of mental challenge, like the characters are constantly trapped. For me, I would love if this movie were 80% set in the Backrooms, 20% set in the real world, and maybe it is. I'm not sure, but I love the idea of this becoming a film, and I like the idea of characters finding themselves trapped in this space, and we're getting to see the Backrooms explored, on the big screen, high definition, longer than the short films have been on YouTube. But if they reveal some of that mystery, if they start to explain away some of the aspects that make the Backrooms tick, then I'm not sure how it's really going to function. Again, I have not seen the movie, so I can't comment on what it does or does not do for the actual idea, of its source material. But also, I have to give this movie an extra dose of credit, and I have to frankly just have faith in the project, because the same kid that made the original shorts, again, this kid named, I believe his name is Ken Parsons, he is the same guy who's directing this movie. And he's like 20, 21 years old. So not only is he a young, budding filmmaker who got the backing of A24, which is a very prestigious art house production for movie making, but he is also literally the architect of the original concept that got this movie made. It's not like they came to him and said, we'll buy the rights to your idea, and then just handed it off to whoever in Hollywood. No, they brought this kid on the whole way. And not only was he like a creative consultant, like you see when it comes to like book to movie adaptations, where sometimes the author has no involvement, sometimes the author has, a creative hand, so to speak, in the process. With this kid, Mr. Parsons, they said, this is your idea, this is your show, you are the director. And so for him to be the engine behind this whole thing, from the small screen on YouTube to now the big screen in a movie theater, I have to trust him, because who's going to better understand the source material than the guy that freaking made it, And so, like, for him, if he is going to explore the whole concept of the Backrooms in much more detail and provide context for everything, then I have to trust his judgment, because he is the architect, So really, just for myself, it's not what I would want to do with the Backrooms. If I was the writer, if I was the director, I don't think this is the approach I would take. Again, I'm commenting on a movie I haven't fully seen yet. We'll talk more once I've seen it. But again, even though it's not what I want to do, this is clearly what the director wants to do, who again is the guy behind the original idea. He is the architect of the whole thing, and who knows better than he himself. So yeah, it's, again, I don't love the trailers, But I love that this movie exists. I love that it's coming out. I cannot wait to see this. I'm just saying that, like, my excitement level for this is not incredibly high. If anything, I'm a little more nervous, but that in of itself is kind of the whole emotional state I'm in regarding the Backrooms in general, to where, like, I'm nervous, but like I'm like, the curiosity factor of everything is overwhelming me, that I can't not look away. And so yeah, the Backrooms comes out this May, and the trailers I think have been good, not great, but from what I'm seeing to the reactions online about this trailer, people are eating it up. And so again, perhaps I'm in the minority, but I have to just have faith in this Mr. Parsons guy, who again directed the original videos, who created this whole concept that got this movie even off the ground in the first place. And now for him to get into the director's chair and see his adaptation go from, again, the small screen to the big screen. I mean, round of freaking applause for him. Like, he's doing the thing. He's a young filmmaker, again in his early 20s, who is getting a shot at Hollywood. That's like every kid's dream who's ever played pretend or has ever written a story for themselves. The idea that it could be a movie someday, he's getting to do it. And so I think it's really, really tremendous that he's getting his shot. And I cannot wait to see this movie when it comes out in theaters later this May. Anyway, keeping it with movie trailers, another trailer got released for a movie that I am anticipating even more than The Backrooms. And this one comes out just a little later in the summer, with The Backrooms being in May and this one being in June. There was a new trailer for the Supergirl movie. And very similar to how I'm kind of digesting the Backrooms marketing, with me liking the first trailer and me liking the second trailer even more, the same is absolutely true for the Supergirl movie. I liked the first trailer. I thought it was cool. I thought, it looked very interesting. This one, though, wow. This second trailer is amazing. And to be honest, for me, the most standout point of it was the music. I thought that the music choice that kind of provided the spine for the whole deal, I thought was really cool sounding and emotional and impactful. And I'm really looking forward to this movie. I really, really think that this is going to be not only a good companion piece, a good follow-up to Superman, which was released in 2025, but I think that this is going to offer a similar yet expanded take on the world now through the eyes of Supergirl. And I really like that. Speaking of Superman, this trailer gives away that Superman himself, Clark Kent, does make a cameo appearance in the movie. In what context he's in it, we're not fully sure, because in the trailer, it seems like he's just being played via an audio recording to her. Perhaps that is the extent of which he will appear in the trailer. Or in the movie, excuse me. Not really sure. He could make an appearance. He could end up fighting with her, back to back. Not fully sure. But from this trailer, we get to see that at least his presence is made known, with him being on screen, and also his voice is provided as well. But in terms of the actual trailer, Supergirl, I think, is a really cool character, and I think it's great that she's getting her due in her own, feature film as well. And this movie is based on a limited comic run called Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. In fact, the movie was originally titled Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, and they shortened it to just Supergirl. And I have that very comic on my shelf. I have not read it yet, at least not fully. The first bit of it that I read, which was probably about 20%, I really enjoyed. I really liked it, but for whatever reason, I did not stick with it. But I'm going to read it through cover to cover before the movie comes out, and I'll probably do that at least in one shot here very soon. But if the movie is anything like the comic, and if the movie is also anything like the little bit of the comic that I read, then I think it's going to be really, really awesome. But I really like the sense of emotion that was in this movie. Like, yeah, this movie looks fun, and it looks like it's going to be an adventure, but like there's this sense of weight that Supergirl, that Kara Zor-El is dealing with her, having survived the destruction of Krypton, and her being in a little bit of a different situation than Superman is, because Superman, escaped the planet when he was an infant, so he doesn't have any memories really of being on the planet, whereas Kara Zor-El, she was able to, when she escaped the planet, when she fled, she was, fully grown. She was a teenager, if not already a young adult, and so she has memories and a history of having friends and family and being a part of the culture on Krypton. And now for her to have that all stripped away, I think it's going to make for some really good emotional storytelling. And then we also get to see the return of Krypto, the Superdog, and Krypto belongs to her. She's the owner of Krypto, and in this trailer we get to see now that Krypto is kind of maybe not the MacGuffin, but he's perhaps at least a linchpin of the movie, because in the trailer we see that Krypto gets injured, and that with whatever injury he has sustained, something poisonous, it sounds like, he only has a couple of days to live. And so now Supergirl has to go off on this quest to not only help someone else she encounters, but also has to find this antidote for Krypto. And the emotional connection that she is feeling to Krypto is presented really well in this trailer. And I think the movie, again, is going to be a lot of fun, but I think it's also going to be pretty heavy-handed too, just in what it's choosing to tell. And I think that that's going to offer a great sense of depth to the movie. I think that this is going to be more than just good popcorn fun, even more so than Superman was. And I'm really looking forward to it. My one complaint has nothing to do with the trailer. It has to do with the second poster. I'm not a fan of the second poster. I'm not saying I dislike it. It's a nice classic shot. It's very, it has some great iconography of a superhero. She's doing the superhero landing. But in terms of the posters that they've released thus far, I really enjoyed the first poster with her wearing the Superman or her Supergirl outfit, and then she's got this long trench coat on. I think that I just like the shot, and I like the outfit that she's wearing more. This one to me is just a little more basic. Still a very cool poster. I just when compared to the first one, I think it kind of lacks a little bit there. But again, whereas the second poster is not as good as the first one, in my opinion, the second trailer is much better than the first trailer. And I've already watched this thing a couple of times, and I know that hopefully I'll be able to see this in a movie theater at some point before it gets released, because I would just love to hear the music and to hear the sounds of the movie prior to it coming out. So yeah, I can't wait for Supergirl. I really enjoy the new DC universe. Not everything that they've released has been to my liking, but the majority of what I've seen and the majority that I know that's coming down the tube, I think is going to be really awesome. And yeah, Supergirl is on deck now, and that movie comes out later in June. All right, kids, let's get out of the world of movie trailers and get into the world of movie reviews, because I just saw a new release, and at the time of this recording, the movie just came out in theaters now, and I am talking about the Super Mario's Galaxy movie. This is the sequel to the Super Mario Bros. Movie, the animated one, which came out a few years ago, and now this is the sequel again, being the Super Mario Galaxy movie. And it kind of pains me to say this, but I was really not a fan of this one. It's not a bad movie per se, but I was honestly kind of bored by it. It wasn't nearly as engaging as the first one. That first one, which I think came out in 2022, I believe, 2021, right around there, that movie was freaking special, okay, because, the kind of rollout for it was, that you had Chris Pratt playing Mario, which people weren't a fan of, because, you get, how you get Joe Schmo, citizen Joe Schmo actor, playing an Italian role and whatnot. Well, he went on to provide his voice, and I thought he did fine with the role. But, you look at that first movie, and I remember when the first teaser poster came out, and I'll throw it up on screen now. This first image here, I thought this captured the tone, the spirit, the vibe, and frankly, the wants of every fan who was interested in this movie. I think that this image perfectly captures the inviting, colorful, fun world that is the Mario universe, and then to have it portrayed in high definition with all the colors and whatnot, and just the sense of scale, it really felt like the world was opening up to us via the movie screen, which I think is what movies are meant to be. They're meant to transport us into new and fantastical worlds, and the first movie did that. It did it so well that it went on to make over $1.3 billion or something at the worldwide box office, and I myself saw it at least 3 times. I love that movie. I loved Mario, Luigi, Donkey Kong. I loved the Mario Kart portion of it. I thought that was the best part, where they have that kart race, and I thought that there were so many special moments. And then you have the end of that movie where they get the star power up and whatnot, and there were so many cool things about that movie that just really rang true to fans like myself who have played Mario throughout the years. And I'm not going to say I'm some super fan of Mario. I'm not. I know a few of the characters, but I don't know all of them. And yeah, I've played Mario Kart and various other Mario games, but I'm not really a huge diehard fan. I really enjoy the world. I think that you can enjoy the world of Mario whether you're a kid, teenager, adult, what have you. And I think that people enjoyed the movie regardless of their age too. Hence why that first film went on to be such a success. It really rang true to what the world offers in terms of the games. The second one, Super Mario Galaxy, I thought really kind of dropped the ball in terms of every available way with it. It looks like the first movie, it sounds like the first movie, but it doesn't feel like the first one, and I'm not really sure why. I can honestly say that I thought that the plot was overall kind of weak, and again, you're going to a Mario movie, you're not necessarily looking for Shakespeare in terms of writing, but like the first movie had such a sense of direction, whereas the second one, the Galaxy movie, honestly feels like it feels really disjointed. It feels like a series of montages stitched together into a final movie. And this movie isn't very long. It comes in at under 2 hours, but this thing felt long to me, and that's really a shame. And I thought that there were just some choices that I thought were just kind of odd. Like certain characters took a back seat compared to others. I thought that you kind of had low hanging fruit with this movie to reach for, and the movie just didn't. And for it being called the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and I've played the Super Mario Galaxy game. I know I just said I haven't played many of them, but that is one of the ones that I had via the Wii. And honestly, from my memory, that is my favorite Mario game, the Super Mario Galaxy game on the Wii. I thought that thing captured the sense of Mario in terms of fun, platforming, puzzle solving, exploration, and then I also thought it scratched the itch of being also a sci-fi game where you're planet hopping and doing all that stuff. And I wanted that sense of scale. I wanted this world to be opened up even more, which is what you would think a movie called Super Mario Galaxy would bring to the table, that it would literally open the universe for our characters to explore in the same way that the game did as well. And I got to be honest, I think that there is a big lack of exploration in this movie. I don't think that there is enough planet hopping, power-up stuff in this movie. And I think that really is a bummer. To be honest, this movie to me felt small, whereas I wanted it to feel big. I also did not think it was nearly as funny as the first one, and I just overall think it's not as memorable as the first one either. And I don't mean to cut this thing down, at the knees and just tear it to shreds, because there are some genuinely good pieces in it. Yoshi, for example, who was teased in the first one, is now in this one. Is in the second one. He was my favorite part. I really enjoyed his presence as well. And I think that there are some cool things in it as well. But I don't know. Like for me, it left a lot to be desired. I will also say though that I thought that the actual choreography in terms of the fights I thought were cool, which is something I don't think I expected to be saying about a Mario movie. The fact that I'm like, yeah, the fights were really cool, but there were. I thought that there were some good kind of micro movements where like they're fighting amongst, say, like a bookshelf or a cabinet, or they're moving through a castle, and they're using every piece of the furniture available to them in the fight as well. I thought that was pretty cool. And, despite me saying that I really wasn't feeling this one, I would very easily and very quickly see a third. I think that these movies are fun, and that you can frankly just do them for forever, because there's so much to explore in the Mario universe. But I just wish that I wish that the Galaxy movie in particular would have explored more than it did. And so, for me it was disappointing. Again, not a bad movie by any metric, but just for myself. I wasn't really feeling this one. I will say though, in my theater there were kids and families, and whatnot, and I saw them eating this thing up. I saw them with their Yoshi plushies and with the hats and all that stuff. Like, this is a family film, and at my screening, it brought out families. And just because I didn't enjoy it, you know, screw my opinion. Because the kids, they were in my theater, I saw they were getting into it, and if they had a good time, then that's all that matters. God bless them, because this is ultimately a kids movie. First and foremost, again, it can be enjoyed for anyone, just how the Mario games itself can be enjoyed by anyone. But I did not vibe with this movie, but there were kids and families that did, and I'm glad that they had the best time. It's just for me, I really wasn't feeling this movie. Hey kids, welcome back to the Far Out Podcast. I have yet another update for this episode. After the last break, I was intending for the last segment to be the launch of the Artemis II rocket, because quite literally, at the time of this recording, and I'm recording this via my phone, real impromptu style, I am watching a live stream of the Artemis II launch via NASA's Twitter page, and there are over 1.4 million people tuned in on this one live stream alone. Who knows how many countless others are watching over various other networks, but we are now just 10 minutes away until the launch of the Artemis II rocket. And in the meantime, until that countdown reaches zero, I was scrolling social media, just checking stuff out, and I saw on Facebook that Joe Gatto, formerly of the Impractical Jokers group, is returning to the group and to the series for the show's final season. And for me, this is a really big deal because I've been watching Impractical Jokers for years. I remember when this series got announced. I've seen it, season in, season out. It has literally made me laugh so hard that I have literally laughed and cried and like fallen out of my chair twice. I have genuinely fallen out of my chair twice from laughing so hard and crying so hard. This show is really, really funny. I've also seen the Impractical Jokers live, and I've also seen Joe Gatto live as well. And what's kind of a bummer is that if you have followed the timeline of the show and of the group, at one point Joe Gatto, who was one of the four members, to make up the group, he had to step away due to issues with his marriage. He actually went through a very public divorce, and this led him needing to step away from the show and from the group to focus on himself, on his wife, and on his family. And so he did it for very noble reasons, but in the aftermath of that, the show continued on with the three remaining members being Sal, Murr, and Q. And the show was good. There were still laughs to be had because in Joe's absence, they've had, celebrities come on to fill out the fourth spot, but it wasn't the same. It just wasn't the same no matter who you got to fill in that fourth spot. And sometimes they had really good guests on, like Paul Rudd or Post Malone, but it just wasn't the same. And when I saw the Impractical Jokers live, it was as the three of them. And so that was kind of bittersweet as well. And then I also got to see Joe Gatto live as well, just he himself. And so I've seen the original lineup just spread across two different live shows because, again, they weren't touring as the four of them now because Joe Gatto had to step away. Well, in the years since his divorce has happened, he's actually reconciled with his wife. I believe that they have gotten remarried. Don't quote me on that, but I know that they've both talked publicly about how they're mending fences and kind of coming back together. And now I just saw via Joe's Facebook page, his official Facebook page, and I verified via his Instagram as well, that he is returning to the show proper for what will be the show's final season. So there is a bit of bittersweetness as well, knowing that the show will be ending after all these years and after all the seasons and whatnot. And I wish it, could continue on for forever. I love the guys, but if it has to go out, I'm so happy that it's going out on probably the highest note possible with the original lineup, coming back for one last ride. And I'm so happy that Joe is in a position to where he can, continue and come back to the show. And I'm very thankful that he's in a position now where that seems like an option, and also that the show and that the network will enable him to do that as well. I'm glad that they didn't get lost in all the legal stuff there and whatnot. Sorry, I got distracted by the NASA live stream there. I had to see if something was happening. But yeah, the Impractical Jokers are coming back together, and for the four of them, and I think it's really, really awesome, and it's good to see Joe Gatto doing well in pretty much every way possible that he's making public via social media. And so, yeah, the Impractical Jokers series is coming back for one final season, which that in of itself is kind of sad, but it's coming back with the original lineup, and we couldn't ask for anything better. And so, yeah, so just this was a nice piece of news to find while I'm watching the Artemis II live stream countdown. And when this episode comes out, the launch will have taken place proper. And so I hope you yourself are tuning into the live stream. I also hope that you've enjoyed the launch as well, and that we can all continue to look up as the Artemis II rocket soars into space, and then we can prepare for Artemis 3 and 4 and whatever comes beyond that. So yeah, it's just it's a pretty cool time to be a fan of TV and to be a fan of space. And thank you for watching and for listening to the podcast. Kids, welcome back to the Far Out Podcast. At the time of this recording, Artemis II has launched. It's done it. It's launched. It's taken off. I'm watching the live stream literally as I'm speaking into the mic right now, and I've got a little bit of the shakes, and I'm a little misty-eyed just because these things don't happen very often, and I'm just so thankful to be able to have said I witnessed human history. Of course, I wasn't actually there. It's not like I was in Florida, watching the actual launch itself. That would have been a real treat for me. But getting to watch the live stream with now over 1.8 million people tuning in via NASA's live stream on Twitter alone is just really, really awesome. And getting to hear that classic countdown of T-10 and so on, it's just really overwhelming. And yeah, I just wanted to get my immediate thoughts of this, and getting to see the rocket take off and then go through its various stages and have a nice clean launch. I just think it's really awesome. And if you're like me, and if you're in the Midwest when the launch took place, if you stood outside and if you faced roughly south to southeast, you'd be facing towards Florida. And it's not like you can actually see the rocket, because even if it was on a clear day, you wouldn't be able to see it. But at the time right now of April 1st, it was incredibly overcast, real nice gray skies. But I still stood outside, and I still was facing south to southeast, roughly, more so on the south side. But I was facing Florida, and I like to think that I was able to see Artemis, and I like to think that they were waving to me as well. And just the fact that I myself and now over 1.9 million people were watching this happen, and we're all looking up at the same sky, and we're all looking towards the future now with our next campaign of space missions. I just think is really, really awesome. And yeah, again, I'm literally recording this as the live stream is going on. We are now 5 minutes and 18 seconds plus launch here, and it's we did it. I mean, we freaking did it. We're going back to the moon, and look, Artemis 2 is not putting people back on the moon proper. That's going to come in a later mission, Artemis 4, I believe. But Artemis 2 is doing a flyby of the moon. We're checking it out, making sure everything's good to go. Artemis 3, we're going to test new technology, and then Artemis 4, we are going to put boots back on the ground of the moon here. And that is scheduled for roughly two plus years from now. And so, again, inside of our lifetimes, we're going to see people re-land on the moon. And then beyond that, whether that's another Artemis mission like Artemis 5, or that's an entirely new program, we're going to see, potentially going to Mars. These Artemis missions, while they're numerous, they're really, helping us get ultimately beyond the moon, and they're going to get us eventually to Mars. And so now to be a part of history, and to just see this happening, and to know that there are people literally at the time of this recording hurtling away from Earth and towards the moon is just tremendous. And by the time this comes out, the launch will have already happened, and all that stuff. But yeah, just again, what you're listening to right now on the Far Out Podcast are my comments, literally as the rocket is flying right now, and I'm watching the live stream. And again, just to feel this sense of connection with everyone, even though it's through the internet, I'm just so thankful, and I'm overwhelmed, honestly. And my hands are shaking a little bit, and I've got a little bit of tears in my eyes here. And I'm a really big fan of space exploration. I'm a really big fan of patriotism, of people coming together to make the impossible happen and to make it possible. And just, because these are all things that we've only read about, we've only, experienced in history books and in documentaries. And yeah, we had, the rovers that went to Mars and whatnot, and they were great in their own right. They really were. We got to see also the final launch of a previous NASA shuttle, as well. We got to watch it get, disembarked into space as well. But like to actually have people returning, air quotes, returning to the moon is really tremendous. And, eventually we will have people going back onto the moon as well. And we are now over 2 million people watching the live stream. And just to think that, I'm a part of this and that you are too is just, it's really, really overwhelming. And I'm I'm freaking out, to be honest. And wow, we did it, with despite all the delays and despite the weather and stuff. And, me jokingly saying I wish they would have launched on April 30th because that's my birthday. For it to have gone off on April 1st, I'm so thankful that I got to be a part of this. And hold on just a sec, I'll be right back. I'm gonna keep the recording running here. I gotta get something here. Just that. Yeah, but yeah, we're still going. The live stream's still going. This recording's still going. And I went to the fridge to get a beer here, so I'm hoping that my mic will catch this. Oh yeah, that's a good crack. All right, hold on. Just took a big gulp of Coors Banquet. Oh man, just how cool is this stuff? I swear, now over 2.1 million people watching. 9 minutes past launch, velocity is over 18,500 miles per hour. They are now just under 120 miles from Earth, and they have over 242,000 miles to get to the moon. Excuse me. And this is all per NASA, and all these things are running tallies here right now, and it's really cool. The main engine is cut off, and now we're at the core separation stage, with the solar array wings opening up eventually, and they are now 131 miles from Earth, and it's man, this is just some crazy stuff. We freaking did it, man. Do you remember where you were when the Artemis II launch happened? I know where I was. I was outside facing Florida, watching the live stream. Brought my laptop outside with me, and I was texting my mom before the launch happened. We were both watching the live stream, and we were giving each other updates, and then. I recorded a really quick impromptu segment before this stuff about, Joe Gatto returning to the Impractical Jokers. So that took me away from the live stream for just a few minutes as NASA was preparing its final bit of technical stuff, and they were analyzing data because the launch timer at one point held at 10 minutes because they had to verify a few things. But to literally be a part of the countdown, for me is just freaking incredible. And I wish that this podcast episode could have honestly been live as well, just like the NASA live stream here. But as soon as I get done recording this segment, this bit that you're listening to right now, I'm gonna export and get it out as fast as I can. This will go up the same day that the Artemis II launch has happened. But just wow, wow, we did it. We're here, and you got to be a part of it. And look, you might not have helped build the darn thing, you might not have invested in the darn thing, whatever. But just appreciating it, just being a person who watched it, who talked about it, all that stuff. You were a part of this because this is not just an achievement for NASA. It's not just an achievement for North America. It's not just an achievement for whoever. This is an achievement literally for humanity, for the entirety of the globe. If you live on Earth, this is for you, and you helped bring this to reality. And this is the first of many. As I said, Artemis 3 is coming, Artemis 4 is coming. Beyond that, who knows? But yeah, wow. Again, I got the shakes a little bit, and I got tears in my eyes, and I'm just really happy to have been, alive for something like this. And space is cool. Exploration is needed in humans. We have a divine purpose. We are God's creation, and it is our duty to also explore God's creation beyond ourselves. We're meant to look up and wonder, and I'm just overwhelmed knowing now that we are continuing in this great big grand mission. And again, I'm so thankful to have been a part of this, and to know that there are literally millions upon millions of other people who also took part in this as well. And so just thank you to NASA for all the updates you provided. You guys provided a lot of cool behind-the-scenes backgrounds, some really cool schematics, some great interviews. You had your own podcast as well, which I was listening to today, leading up to the launch as well. And just thank you to all my friends and family who showed interest in this as well. And I'm thankful to also have the Far Out podcast so that I was able to provide some coverage of this leading up to the launch, and how I expressed my interest in this and why I think this is so important. And I'm so thankful to have this outlet right now, just as I'm speaking, to get this out, because I'm an emotional guy. I get worked up over music and movies and books, and I'm getting worked up over this right now. And just to have this outlet is really, really awesome. And so, yeah, just thank you to everyone who partook in this. And this is Artemis II, but I mean, this is truly the first step among many. We have a long ways to go, but we're all going to do it together. And I'm so thankful to be a part of it. And all these shots are so cool of the rocket, again, lifting off and flying through space, and getting to see kind of the GoPro shots of everything, and getting to hear those engines rumble and to hear the countdown. I'm overwhelmed. I'm completely overwhelmed. Oh yeah, that beer, that Coors Banquet tastes like victory. So yeah, I'm sure that this is making for fantastic radio. But yeah, just thank you so much for watching the Far Out podcast, for listening to the Far Out podcast. Thank you for watching NASA's coverage of this. Thank you for listening to their coverage as well, whether you're watching from America or from the other side of the planet, or wherever you're watching from, no matter what broadcast you were watching from. Just thank you so much for being a part of this with me. And the sky is the limit, and beyond the sky now. In fact, we're going beyond that. And so in the worlds of Neil deGrasse Tyson, your personal astrophysicist, keep looking up. All right, bye bye.